It's your aunties, your favorite aunties. And I'm Paige means Hopper, Auntie Paige. There's Auntie Rosemary, Auntie Genoa, and Auntie Wanda. And we're just so happy that you came back to join us tonight. We have an exciting topic, I think, at least as stimulating. And so I would like for the ladies to go around and just greet you for themselves, and then we'll go ahead and dive in. Go right ahead, ladies.
Hi, I'm Auntie Rosemary, affectionately called Auntie Rose. You are in for a treat tonight. Get ready and hold tight.
Yes, 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 yes. And
This is Auntie Genoa. And yes, it's a very good topic. And it would be nice to hear some for you guys to participate tonight. We really want to know what you think.
Auntie Wanda here, so ready to see you tonight and speak with you live. So give us some shouts and we will bring you into the conversation and hopefully have a wonderful evening.
yes, let us hear from you tonight. Give us your questions, your comments, even if you have jokes, but keep them clean. Keep the jokes clean. I am just super excited about what we're going to talk about tonight because it is so prevalent in our society, right? And not just in the Black community, but in our society, our culture in general. We are going to talk about crabs in a bucket. What is it? And what do we do about it? Whether it's them or us, right? Because a lot of times we want to point to other people and, recognize behavior in others, but not ever our own selves. And so we'll be looking at all of that tonight. But before we do, I just wanted to get into the difference between jealousy and envy, because crabs in a bucket has a lot to do with jealousy and envy, right? And comparison and resentment and what someone else has that I don't, and all of those kinds of things. And so jealousy is like this pining, this longing, this like deep want for something that somebody else has that is out of my reach. Envy is just simply wanting what they have. Being envious is slightly healthier than jealousy, because envy, we can admit, right? Like, oh my God, Wanda, your eyes, like I would love to have eyes like yours. It's a compliment and it's real and it's, sincere, it's above board. But for me to secretly want what Wanda has, and want it so desperately that I'm willing to change who I am. Hi, Shonda.
Hey.
That's what really, takes us to a whole other level. So welcome again. And we're super excited that you're here. And we're going to go ahead and get started. So if you have my book, I'm going to read a little bit from it on page 95. It talks about jealousy as being the main component of this conversation, right? And then under jealousy are some subsets of that wound. We're talking about wounds, the wounds of American slavery. So after jealousy comes comparison, crabs in a bucket, and after crabs in a bucket, resentment. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be in this order. It's interchangeable. It has a way of, its characteristic and its personality of crabs in a bucket is such that it can move into jealousy, it can move into resentment, it can evolve into bitterness. It just has a bunch of different things. We're going to talk about it. But I'm just going to read a little bit about jealousy. So jealousy keeps close company with anger and unforgiveness. One of its main characteristics is that it causes a deep pining or longing, a want or need to be fulfilled, yet it never is. It leaves us hopelessly yearning for that which is in our sight, but out of our reach. We desperately want what others appear to have, the freedom to move about without judgment or fear. But we feel stuck, inadequate, or helpless in our pursuit of what matters to us. Jealousy comes largely from rejection and accompanying shame, anger, hopelessness, and yes, anxiety. It can cause a deep bitterness from being constantly and deliberately overlooked. She's getting it. He's getting it. Where's mine? Unchecked, jealousy can lead to death. Death of dreams, death of relationships, death of forward movement. In general, this country frowns and looks down on Black people. In its eyes, and certainly in its constitution, we are seen as second-class citizens. Comparison. Comparing two human beings is like comparing two snowflakes or two different types of fruit. No two snowflakes are alike, and each fruit has its own delicious flavor. So comparison can become a serious issue when measuring human value, and especially when measuring oneself against others, because none of us are exactly alike. When people get swept up into comparison, they tend to shapeshift into unrecognizable self in an attempt to match those with whom they compare themselves. Now let's take it back to slavery. In slavery, comparison was used as a tool and a weapon to divide and conquer the unified mentality of the enslaved. Today, comparisons show up heavily on social media, measuring who has the largest number of followers, likes, clicks, views of their artificial technological lives. Many of us are posting or displaying only the most pristine images of our successes and wins as a norm for others to envy or compare to. Why should we compare ourselves to others when God Himself designed us to His exact specifications? We are each amazing, just the way we are. Now let's talk about crabs in a bucket, and then I'm going to open it up and throw it to the ladies, which I'm sure you guys are super excited for. I know I am. Crabs in a bucket. Have you ever seen crabs in a bucket? Most will attempt to climb out to avoid that boiling hot water on the stove. However, when one crab climbs up on the backs of the others to try to escape, the others will pull the would-be escapee down and back into the bucket. It's almost as if all the others are saying, if I can't get out, no one else will. This phenomenon in the Black community is based on a caste system as an extension of the Willie Lynch letter. Now, I've done a ton of research on the Willie Lynch letter, and there's no definitive proof that it's true because of the language and the period of time that it was written doesn't match. There are lots of things, but at the end of the day, the effect of the Willie Lynch letter, no matter what that document is still carrying on throughout our current culture.
Yes.
So it comes down to nappy hair against good hair, light skin against dark skin, old against young, educated against uneducated, rich versus poor. Now we can say rich versus poor because we didn't have a lot of rich Black people for a long time. Well, we did. And then, some systems and some societies like Black Wall Street, if you know about that, go look it up if you don't. Either way, it's a toxic mix when you have all of those comparisons going on and those biases in place, right? Especially within a culture. It's sick to constantly compare ourselves in this way. It causes extreme levels of irritation and discontent with who we are as individuals and what we possess that distinguishes us from others. It causes us to want what others have and to be like them. For example, one of the things that I've noticed is that a lot of Black people are bleaching now. And even in Africa, they're bleaching their skin to try to get their skin lighter. And then what's interesting is that the lighter people are going to tanning salons and trying their best to be Blacker. Isn't that interesting? So it sets up a bizarre sabotage style of competition. Our generational extension is such that when one person from a particular family group or communal construct begins to make progress or gain favor, advanced education, marriage, a new job promotion, others in the group attempt to derail the climber. The objective is to claw and grab at another's success in order to stop their advancement, and in some cases, even climb on top of their back to better their own chances of escape. Lastly, crabs in a bucket is also strongly related to another way that fear shows up in the Black community. That is the fear of being left behind. Slavery's legacy has left many Black Americans with the constant worry that there's not enough for everyone. If one person feels another will surpass them in status, achievement, or clout, in effect leaving others behind, they will, whether overtly or covertly, attempt to stop the sprinter from advancing. It is this kind of fear that stimulates jealousy and envy. Unfortunately, sometimes that jealousy can lead to destruction or even death, because it carries with it an attitude of, if I can't have it, neither will you.
Yes.
Right? That's a lot to unpack, and unpack it we must. Because if we're going to break this phenomenon, right, this way of being for generations to come, then the buck stops here. It always stops at the elders, at the seasoned, at the ones who have become wiser, hopefully, with their experience and living and the work that they do. Hopefully, all don't. So, anyone who wants to take it away can absolutely do that. What do you think about what I've just read?
I love it. I love it. It's so powerful, so moving. It has that oomph. You know what I'm talking about. That oomph that explains everything that we know. I always say, I was in DC years ago, of course, when I was in school, and I lived there for a while. And I remember being in the subway, and somebody screamed out, "Don't nobody love me!" And I was like, "Ooh!" And I always say when I'm directing, I always say the opposite of fear is love. Because if we were all truly loved, then it wouldn't be the jealousy, the envies. Those are the emotions, excuse me, that are born out of the lack thereof of love. It's born out of that. So when he screamed from the passion, from the depths of his soul, you know, the first thing I thought was, this person's going to get a gun and start picking people off, you know, and we will go there, just like you said earlier, about it can lead to death. It can. The stalking, you know, the insecure that I don't have what you have. And it comes in rearing, as have you been reared as a child? You know, I always say, you know, what is the backstory? What was your upbringing? And it is so true with the healing of the wounds of American slavery, because those wounds are still dripping wet.
Wow.
It is. It's dripping wet. And we need, and this panel and that book, it's a soul soother. And I'm not just saying that because I know Paige, or I read that book and I absorbed that book, because it is like about time that somebody that is written something where they're pointing out the wounds, the sub wounds of, now we knew it was there, but we didn't have those words for it. Now we do.
Right.
Now we do.
And this is beginning to reveal itself as a new language. We have a Facebook user who's saying so much negative ingrained from years of conditioning. Absolutely right. You know, the construct of American slavery, as I was saying last week, you know, just based on the wounds and the etymology that I went through, going to the origin of the word. Where did it come from and what does it really mean? You know, who concocted, who made up what these words mean, right? And that most of them came from the European languages. And what I discovered is that the abuse was so much worse than I thought it was, because the intent, as the viewer was saying, the intent was to ingrain, perfect word, because that means to plant a seed.
Yes.
And the seed does what? It grows.
It grows. I distinctly remember when it happened for my community. Because easily with my household, there was 9 children in my family and my parents. And so we had a household of 11 people. So we kind of looked like crabs in a barrel, right? Because of the volume of us. But somehow there wasn't that scarcity mindset. Even though we didn't have a lot, we always knew we had enough. So the jealousy factor didn't kick in as much, or the envy factor. But it happened when, I'm going to say, we were all happy watching all the little TV shows of the 70s, the Waltons and Good Times and the Jeffersons and the Brady Bunch and all these shows that kind of inform the American, psyche of what good living is, or middle class living is, right? And we were all fine being those people, or emulating those people. And then all of a sudden, the triple play of Dallas Dynasty and Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous.
Oh, wow.
Came on TV and changed the culture almost overnight.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, everybody had to have designer. You couldn't go to Kresge's or Lerner's or Woolworths or Montgomery Ward's anymore and shop. You had to go to the department stores and buy labels, because otherwise you weren't good enough, or you were poor, or you were looked down upon. All those fake values came into play for our culture and in the community of the world that I lived in during those times. And I vividly remember how people's minds changed almost overnight, thinking they had to have a label in order to be validated.
Isn't that
interesting? Other people that had it and didn't, they wanted it, and people were stealing from folks that had it. It was insane.
Do you remember the chain snatching days?
Yes.
And do you remember the days when guys were shooting each other over the Jordans? Or actually, they were only even Nikes then. They weren't even Air Jordans or anything special. It was just, a Nike, a designer. God, that is such a profound observation.
Mm-hmm.
That how media influences our culture.
Mm-hmm.
And particularly us, because we're always looking for a way to gain more value in this construct that we're in, where we're just simply devalued. Even the Constitution reduces us to what?
3/5
of a person. So thank you for adding that. That is such a great observation. I love that.
Yeah, going on that, I grew up in that era too, and if a lot of that's the time when marriages was starting to break up, and you seen single parent families, and we couldn't afford everything, and it has on Kmart specials and all that other stuff. And so as a young person, I had to grow a thick skin and then just act like I didn't care. And then they thought I was having some Kmart specials was crazy. I started dressing crazy. That was to stand out and show them I don't care what you're talking about. You know what I'm saying? And so I made my own thing, kind of like these young people do now. All this weird stuff that they do just to stand out, to give themselves value. And then somebody else like, oh, that's really cool. And then they copy them, whether good or bad. It's just if it's weird, if it stands out and everything, and the young people they gravitate to it. But there are some things that they gravitate to that it doesn't help them at all. And
Right.
I try to, one young person at a time, because I try to establish, I'll say a uplifting relationship where I can be able to talk to them in a positive manner. So if I have something I want to share with them, it's just basically more to help them to move forward in their lives, because because of the experience that I have, the wrong stuff that got me where I didn't want to be at, where I can help them to be in a better position, where I'm able to speak into their lives, and they can either use or not use. But a lot of times when they've used the suggestions that I made, they come back to me, oh, I did what you told me to do on this, and they'll tell me the positive result and everything like that. And I'm not looking for anything except for to help them rise.
Right. And so you brought up a good point, which is, that inside of this society, this culture, where, we really become homogenized because of the jealousies and the envy and the comparisons. Because as I was reading, what we do is we begin to morph or shapeshift who we are to become who we think we should be, or who is more acceptable, the image that's more acceptable to this society. And so when you have a creative, because at the end of the day, that is a creative young person, the one who, decides to put laces at the front of their jeans, or, rip up their shirt in a certain way, wear their hair shaved on the sides, whatever that is, that I think that individual is doing their best to identify as who they are inside of a system that tells you need to be how everyone else is being, in other words. And so when you have one of those in front of you, those usually will be the one that's trying to advance or, segregate themselves from the so-called norm and be unique. So, I think that that's one of the areas in the conversation of crabs in a bucket where young people need to be encouraged to be who they are and to, display their gifts and their talents and all of these things, as long as it's not detrimental to them. Auntie Rosemary, did you want to chime in on it?
Yeah, you know what? I think a lot of things in our community is for survival. The holy jeans now, if you had holy jeans on back in the day, it was like, what? You mean they're not greased, they're not starched, they're not, you don't have a sack-heeled shoe, you don't have, the Afro puff and strong with the pick in the hair. We had to come with a survival mode. And then there's different personalities. Like, I'm looking at that crab in the bucket picture, and you see some crabs just gave up. They don't even crawl. And then you got ones that's trying, and they're steady reaching. I mean, it's like, no, you're coming down. But the reason why I say survival mode, I'm going to go back, because the ones, it's a mindset. It is how you're raised. It's the community that you're coming from. And some people come from a strong family where, the father was there and he was able to contribute, because I don't care what you say. A father needs to be in a home. A man can only raise another man. We're strong women, and we can, but we can't. We're not men. We're not men. So what I'm trying to say is the family foundation. It can, if you're not reared a certain way, if you don't have that secure, if you're not secure with yourself, then it can cause the jealousy. It can cause the envy. It can cause all of that. It's nothing like a father telling his daughter, you look beautiful, before somebody else tell her in the wrong way, and she takes it another way, and then she's, get out there and learn some lessons she didn't need to learn, or him, either way. But for me, it's the foundation of how our, back in the day, we know the community was there. And some of that helped that self-esteem. So you're not envious, because I've told many times, oh, you look, there's nothing wrong with your hair. It's nothing wrong with, what you got on, or, you be grateful, that God has blessed you with this. Some people don't have nothing. Right. And that's why I say survival mode. Yeah. And insecurity can cause those what I say is born out of the lack of love, the envy, the jealousy, the modes, things like that. That foundation must be laid. It must be laid. Otherwise, you're learning lessons that you don't need to learn, and it's pain that you have to go through in order to learn the lesson and then be productive. And you got to go through all of the hurts, like what in your book, the pain and everything is unnecessary. But if you don't know, you don't know. You don't know.
And one of the viewers popped up and said that, they believe that also comes out of rebelling, and they're absolutely right. But then we have to ask ourselves, what are we rebelling against? And part of what we're rebelling against is not being seen, being invisible, being erased. And so I think that that's what we're seeing with a lot of young and older people right now, is we're breaking out of that existence of a standard of beauty that didn't belong to us, didn't come from us, and doesn't fit who we are. And so we're just trying to blossom and bloom. One of the points that you brought up was excellent, which is love is the opposite of fear. And part of what I think our expectation or our standard should be raised to, if it's not there already. I know some parents like Wanda, for example, and Genoa. I know that there are some parents who do the work of supporting their young person to understand who they are, what their purpose is, what their mission in life is, and what it is that they're to be doing to be about their Father's business, right? And once you know these things about yourself, then you don't have time to look on the other side where the grass is greener but might be astroturf. You don't have time to look over there. You're fixed on staying in your own lane, doing your own thing, and you're not really worried. And I think that's a lot of what is missing. Like you said, that foundational piece of, I know my mom, when she was raising us, oh my God, are we all different? Like completely. And with Wanda, 9 people and 9 siblings, right?
You 2 are the same. 8 siblings. I'm number 8. A baby girl.
2 are the same, or you say no 2?
No 2 are the same.
No 2 are the same. Any mother who's raising children knows, these people they're human beings. They have their own personality. And with my mom, she read to us a lot. I saw where Wanda, I loved your post where you said, something about you've done a good job when you know that your child likes to read books more than they like to watch television, or you read to your child from the womb or when they're young, and then they relate to the reading as love. And so therefore they will enjoy reading more than they will watching television. And that was exactly, how we were raised. But back to the personality piece, each child has their own personality. And so even if the parent is too busy because she's a single parent, she's got 3 jobs, she doesn't have a lot of time to focus and hone in on what that child's personality, their gifts, their talents, and their characteristics are like. I mean, they know their child, but to go into the depths of honing and excavating their talents and bringing that all to the surface and cultivating all of that, it takes time. It takes attention. And so even if the mom herself can't do it, then that's what the village is for.
Oh my!
And I honestly believe that. I honestly believe that there are, like, I tell you right now, my husband and I have mentored thousands of young people. And were their parents bad parents? No. Their parents were very busy parents, but they also had the wherewithal then to incorporate others in their village, incorporate others in their lives that could help their children. And that's where the shame and the guilt and all of that needs to die. It needs to die because a closed mouth doesn't get fed.
Closed mouth doesn't get fed, especially when there's 8 other mouths around the table.
All those feet under the table.
I want to speak to the love point, the foundation pieces, because both my parents died before I was 16. So I lost both of them. I lost my dad when I was 6, and I lost my mom when I was 15. And I did have older siblings who tried to step in and be mom and dad, but there was a disconnect, obviously, because they didn't know what they were doing, and I wasn't really trying to hear it.
Right.
But,
that part.
But I knew that I was loved. But I didn't have that person to mentor me, so I had to figure it out on my own. And I did use the village. I went to the parents that I liked, and would try to just observe and learn and ask questions from them. Parents of my friends, the ones that I wanted to emulate and be like, I would try to hang out with them as much as possible, or peek in their windows, or sit in their kitchens, whatever I could do to just like absorb some of the wisdom and the knowledge that was happening in those households. And also, I obviously read a lot, but I also would take the time to be with older people. Like in growing up, we were very segregated age-wise. You weren't supposed to hang out with older people, but I did not shy away from that because I knew that there was something I could glean from those relationships. And none of them really like took me by the hand and said, let me help you, let me mentor you. So I was always me kind of like clawing in to get what I could get.
Yeah.
But I'm saying this to say, because there's some folks out there that don't have the parental influence. I'm saying this to say your community does. Your community has what you need. You have to be willing enough to allow them to contribute to you. I didn't do it right away because there was some guilt, like you're not my mom. I don't want you because you can't replace my mom. I had that, or if I took some advice, I feel a little guilty about taking advice from another mother. It's like, would my mom appreciate this? But that was just a silliness, right? I'm sharing this to again say that the community and the village has everything that you need.
Absolutely.
Everything.
Absolutely.
It's not lacking anything.
You know what? I have to chime in. You know what? I totally agree with that. My mother died when I was 10 years old. So I understand. And I remember praying to God saying, there's a bum out there. Why don't you just take him instead of my mother? So it was like I was jealous and envious of people that had their mothers.
Yes.
And, even with their fathers, because my father was an alcoholic. So he would call me, come stumbling drunk in front of my friends, and he would, right. I'm like, oh no, so I understand what you're saying, and brave of you to go and listen to other adults. I wasn't that type of child because I was busy. I was the oldest, so I was busy raising my siblings.
No one knows about that.
Exactly. So I understand what you're saying. You weren't trying to hear it because they weren't trying to hear what I had to say. So I get it. But trying to keep together is what I knew, and I was like, and I would cry out to God. I'm like, well, why? Why? Why is this? So, I'm just saying that with the jealousy comes, I didn't have this. I didn't have my mother. And, my father didn't, he didn't fit into the picture. So, that's where the envy comes in. But I had to learn those lessons, the jealousy. I had to learn those lessons. I had to, like you said, you taught yourself. I had to say, okay, pray and just I had those aunties. I had my grandmother, that taught me that old school way. And I just fell into that. But you're absolutely right. That love is exactly what you need. But if not, you're right. You need to find the village, which is missing in our community right now.
Because well, you know what? I have to disagree.
Okay, that's no worries.
I have to disagree, lovingly disagree, because who are we?
Yeah.
I think we're not missing. I think we're not stepping up.
Okay.
Because we think, it's missing. And not realizing that we're it. That's like saying, the government this and the government that, not realizing that we are the government.
We are the government, yep.
Right?
Well,
so saying, well, the village is missing, but we are the village. So then how can we shift so that we're recognized and identified and showing up as the village?
Exactly.
And because I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to jump in here.
Yeah, please do.
Because I've been listening to everybody. You guys have so much good stuff. And my thing is having shared values and being cookie cutter people is two different things. And these young people, when you talk to them, what they want to do with their life, where they want to go, everybody wants to do the same thing. But the thing is, God, when you come here, everybody does not have the same job. If everybody's doing the same thing, we would miss out on so much stuff.
Exactly.
And I always tell, because they teach us to embrace our weaknesses and work on those, when our strengths, the things that God sent us here with, is what we're an answer to prayer for. And when I'm talking to young people, I ask them, what bothers you? What is the pressing thing? Where is your strength at?
Right. And I think that we miss out on who we are and what we can have by looking for what's missing.
Yes, that's true.
Rather than looking at what we have in our hands. It's like that story in the Bible about the widow woman and her child. And she didn't have any money and her husband had just died and she has these two sons and she's like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I have no money. And so the prophet goes by her house and says, go collect all the jars you can from your neighbors. I can see Wanda doing this. Like she is the baby. I'm knocking my neighbor's door in a minute woman. I love her for that. And she collected all those vessels, right? And she just had a tiny bit of oil in a jar, just a tiny bit of oil. But as the vessels were being brought into her house, the neighbors were bringing the vessels, the boys were going out, knocking on the neighbors' doors. Closed mouth doesn't get fed, right? They're knocking. They get the vessels, they take them back home, and as they take them back home, their mother's filling them up, and they filled up and they filled up and they filled up with that little bit of oil until the last vessel was filled. And the only reason there was no more oil is because there were no more vessels. So I see us as the vessels.
Yes, I agree.
And we need to pour oil into one another.
Oh,
We need to pour some oil into our babies.
Yes.
And I say
And
our
nobody
babies.
teach you to be in yourself. Okay,
Right?
nobody teach you being you.
And there's enough love to go around.
Oh, yeah.
It
We
is.
just aren't okay, let's be real about why we aren't doing it. Why we aren't showing up as village. One of the reasons that came up in our very first show on boundaries was, I would say people think they're respecting boundaries, but I think that there's fear
Yes.
of rejection.
Ouch!
Right? What's in my hands? Hi, Jackie. What's in my hands?
Oh,
Yeah, and it's the
Yes.
same as when Moses went. He found the burning bush, and he comes before God. He takes off his shoes. God tells him to go free his people from Pharaoh, right? And Moses is like, "Well, I stutter. I can't talk right.
I have to
I
tell
don't
you.
know what to do." But then God asked him, "What's that in your hand? What's that in your hand?" And it was the staff
Yes.
that God had given him. And he threw the staff down on the ground and turned into a snake. He put the staff down in the water, and the water's parted, or blood. They start bleeding. The staff was actually the conduit for all of the diseases and all of that came through, and supported the Israelites to leave Egypt with all the gold and all the stuff. So they didn't have any reason to be jealous.
Well, I have a jealous story. When me and Lamont first got married years ago, we were invited to my uncle. I just met him out here. So he said, "Hey, I'm having a dinner party and come on over, just if you can bring something." And I'm like, "Ooh." I mean, we didn't have nothing. I remember having some beans and I said, "You know what? I'm going to make some beans and I'm going to bring them over." And as soon as I got, I set them out and then I went to greet my uncle. And then I heard somebody say, "She had a nerve to bring these beans to a dinner party," and that kind of like made me slump over a little bit. But I said, that's fine. But in the end, with everything that was my beans was gone.
I was about to say, because that girl can burn.
That's what I'm saying.
Gone, and everybody else was taking food, taking their food back home. So you know what? It did kind of deflate. So and what is she trying to do? Crab in the bucket. She's trying to bring me down because I brought beans to the, but like I said, I give you just gotta taste my beans, okay?
I love that.
I laughed in that one because a young person would say, "What? You don't want my beans? I'm taking my beans home."
I want to
Well, I'm
speak
glad you didn't take your beans home, because then they got a lesson out of that one.
on that fear front. I have something to share about our first session was about boundaries, and this happened about 3 days after that conversation. I live in an apartment building, and I was walking down the hallway, and I heard this baby crying long before I got to the door. So it was like 2 minutes of crying, and I came up at the door, and it was that real like hurtful cry. And it was like a early baby, like a 6-month-old or less child. And I was like, "Oh, I want to help this baby. I don't know what's happening. Did mom go to sleep? Whatever." So, and then I heard the boundaries conversation in my head. I'm like, "Oh, you're crossing the line. Don't knock on this door. She's just having a bad moment. Give her a moment. We judge parents too quickly and too harshly." Da, 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 da. So I didn't knock on the door. But what I did As soon as I got to the elevator, I called August and I was like, hey, can you walk by this apartment number and tell me if you hear this baby still crying? Because I was planning on coming back to the rescue.
To the rescue. Give me that child.
I was worried about shaming the mom, like making her feel like she wasn't adequate enough or whatever. And I didn't want to do that. But that baby's crying just like broke my heart. I'm like, he's crying too long. I don't want him to cry longer.
I know, and you hear about those stories on the airplane where the mama can't calm the baby down. I mean, there was one maybe about 2 years ago, I think it was, or so. And maybe it was even before the pandemic started. But there was a mother on the plane and she couldn't calm her child. And she was just frazzled because she had another toddler there with her and this newborn. And she was just, and if you're flying with a child, period, that's a lot.
It's hard.
And so someone had taken another mother, came over and discreetly, whispered in her ear, can I just sit next to you and hold your child?
Yeah.
Would you mind if I do that for you while you change the diaper or whatever it was she was tending, to with the other child? And she did that almost the whole flight and calmed that baby down. That's village.
Yeah, that's village. But August went by. She didn't hear the baby, and so I was relieved. I'm like, okay, she calmed her down. She was fixing her
good.
doing something or changing her, or bathing her, or whatever. So all good. So.
I was hoping you would wrap that story up because I wanted to hear what happened in the end.
It was bothering me. I was like, oh, you should have went to the door. You're being afraid.
So there are a couple of things that I want to talk about. Thank you all for sharing so eloquently. There's a couple of things I want to talk about that are currently in the news. One is Shanquella Robinson. We're talking about crabs in a bucket. We're talking about jealousy, envy, resentment, right? Comparison. And also Deion Sanders, prime time. And I just want to hit on those really briefly because we got maybe about 16 minutes or so left. Shanquella Robinson. I mentioned her in the first show, which was about boundaries. And Auntie Wanda gave us just this eloquent example of how to go about making friends, vetting people, and how young people should go about that. It was very much like you did in your childhood, check out who, you thought was doing well in school, who was being, in alignment with a proper alignment with authority and getting along with others and, doing their homework. And then you align yourself with them and then kind of created boundaries with those who weren't in alignment with your values, even your young, youthful, values. And I didn't want to mention her name then, because I didn't want our conversation to veer so much into, social media and what was happening then. But right now they are extraditing those who ran off and left Shanquella in Mexico. So essentially what happened, for those of you who may be viewing and don't know, very briefly, a young woman who had her own business, made a lot of money, was doing a lot of traveling, very pretty, very well-spoken, very well-liked, very popular, was on a trip with her so-called friends in Mexico. They rented a villa, and within 24 hours, she was attacked by one of her so-called friends, and she was essentially murdered. She was injured to the point of death, but she survived her injury for about 15 minutes before she died. The injuries were that she had a broken neck and a broken vertebrae, upper vertebrae, so she couldn't breathe. And she was having a very difficult time. I mean, obviously, she died. And then the other so-called friends who had all gone with her to this villa in Mexico left her there and left Mexico a day earlier than they had planned, and all went back to North Carolina telling varying stories as to what had occurred. They started by calling her parents and telling her parents that she had alcohol poisoning, right? And then at the end of the day, they did a little bit more research and whatnot. So I believe, based on what I'm reading, and there's some facts, there's some fiction, but most of all, they're getting down to the facts now. And at the end of the day, that I had heard once that jealousy can lead to death. We all know jealousy can lead to death. But in this case, it is a textbook classic example of how jealousy can lead to death, because she was, the alpha female, and she had the money, and she had the looks, and she had the popularity, but she was also very humble and kind and would give someone the shirt off of her back, according to her family. But what would drive someone to the point? It was within 24 hours. What could have happened in 24 hours that would cause someone to have that much rage and jealousy towards someone else that they would kill them within 24 hours? So I honestly believe that it was a setup.
Mm.
And it was a setup. They knew what they were going to do. And so that's why it's so important to combine your boundaries, right, with vetting who's in your circle, who's in your life, because that kind of jealousy really can lead to death. There's another case, right, in the news right now about a little much lighter, about Deion Sanders, primetime ex-football player, who went down to Jackson State University and was their head coach for a couple of years and took them to 2 championships. And then just in the last week decided to announce his retirement, that he's going to go to Colorado and teach, coach at Colorado University, I believe it is. And, he's going to make more money and all of these things. But people are really dragging Deion. Crabs in a bucket. The brother's advancing himself. He went there. He did what he was supposed to do. He's advancing, getting out of that bucket, right? Moving on. And here they are, just dragging him, saying, he never was for the HBCUs in the first place. In the Southwest Athletics Division or something like that.
Mm.
He never was for them and all that. Yes, he was for them. He was for them. He took them through 2 championships. So part of, I guess, what I want to open the conversation up to, how was he wrong for wanting to leave?
I think Deion is married to football, and he's dating coaching gigs and teams. Like, he's married to football and he's dating the teams. And that's how you have to look at it, right? His love is football, and he can date whoever he wants to date. But he's married to football.
That is such an apt metaphor.
It
really
simple.
Is.
It's like,
I hadn't thought about it that way. But it's true.
And he's not power hoarding either. He could easily stay where he was and hoard all the power and be the head coach forever. But his movement actually creates an opening for somebody else to step into a championship team and continue to carry them further.
Right. Big fish in a little pond. And here's the other thing, too, that I was saying to the ladies before we started. He actually, what he did is he opened the door for someone else to do the same thing that he's doing. And there are enough amazing retired pro football players to fill each and every HBCU's team.
Mm-hmm. Did he stay with his one team his whole career? I don't know his career that well. So,
Deion Sanders?
Yes.
I don't know, but I know Jamel knows.
I don't think he did. I have a feeling he played with more than one team. So in my mind, it's the same thing. It's what they do in football.
5. My husband just said he played on 5 different NFL teams.
There you go. He's being who he was.
5 lovers, right? One. But I mean, just think about the mentality, though. Rather than thinking, wow. Deion set a new precedence. Now other coaches will want to, go on and do what he did. And, all of our HBCUs will be winning teams now. And, beyond that, our young people will receive some excellent mentorship and values, depending on who comes to coach for them. But at the end of the day, he set a precedence and now he's going on. And so we should be happy for him. We should be celebrating him.
Yes, the precedence and a playbook. He gave them the playbook before he left.
Gave them the blueprint.
Right.
So what's that mentality? That crabs in a bucket. That's what that is.
Yeah.
Teacher, know what?
Okay,
I'm mad at you, Deion.
this is the thing. This is the thing on the stuff, because his show was called Playbook, but we've been conditioned as a people to look for the savior, and they don't want to. They want to shine, but they don't want to put in the work.
Ooh, that's the other part, Genoa. I was thinking about that too. Like when one person steps up, we want to put all of our expectancy and all of our hopes and our dreams into this one person as a leader, rather than dividing that responsibility among us all, which is the village. I mean, in the microcosm of that is the village, and how we're all looking for a leader. We're all looking for someone to step up and be the one to start it off. And that's fine for one person to start it off, but then, others need to step up, and we need to I won't even say rebuild the village, because the village isn't broken down.
No.
The village just isn't showing up in the capacity that we should. And a lot of it has to do with jealousy too.
Jealousy. It is. It's that old story of, when you have two people in the same boat, and one is saying, I'm going to be an astronaut, and the other one's like, what are you talking about? We're in the same boat here. He can't see it for himself. He can't see it for himself, so he's not going to see it for you. So anytime that somebody is trying to destroy, be a dream killer, you have to long have a spoon. You have to, you can be civil about it, but long have a spoon, which means, treat him civil, good, and everything else. But, don't let anyone destroy or kill your dreams. It's that same thing. We're in that same boat. It's a lot of people don't, it's because they don't know how to uplift the next person. They're just looking at what their surroundings. We're in the same boat. So what you talking about?
Same bucket. Where you think you're going?
And that was
get back in here with the rest of us.
In our community. Look at her. Where she think she going?
That part. That is why a lot of people don't step up, because of the fear of that. Did you hear me? That is why a lot of people don't step up. Because of the fear of people looking at them and talking about them and picking at them and biting and backbiting and all of that, the jealousy stuff.
Yeah.
But see, here's the thing. We have a superpower.
Yes.
We have a superpower. Do you know what it is?
Our love for each other.
That's it. When we are really vulnerable and transparent enough to share it at the level that we're capable of sharing it, baby, nothing can stop us. Jackie said, it is really interesting how we won't step up, but tear down someone else who is putting in the work and chasing destiny. All right, the show's over. Jackie just summed it up. It is. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? And it's that fear.
It's the fear
of being the one.
And I like how T.D. Jakes talks about it too. He says in one of his books, I think it's Instinct, where he talks about the giraffe cannot explain its vision to the turtle. Like, he just can't.
Wow. And
so just go on about being about the business of being a giraffe and don't worry about the turtle.
And can an eagle share her vision with a chicken?
Chicken's vision is of the pot.
All they see is the metal walls. We're in a bucket here. What the? No, you're not in the bucket. Or if we all climb to one side of the bucket, we can knock it down. It'll just tip over. We can all get out. Have you guys ever seen that video of the woman who's about to make the crabs, and they start escaping on her, so she's chasing like the little blue crabs all over the kitchen?
Oh, that was hilarious.
You can probably only catch one at a time.
Yeah, if they let you catch them, you're gonna get tore up first. Or they get in that pot they got out.
Yeah.
But can I say something? You young people, you have my permission to be great, and you have my permission to step out, and you have my permission to be yourself.
That's right. Stand out.
Stand
out. We will support you.
And make sure, don't worry about it. Bring your beans to that dinner party. It's all right.
Bring your beans.
It's like that song. I love well, I'll say holiday song because Christmas brings up a whole other issue. But that holiday song about the little drummer boy, all he had was his drum. And he said that I have no gifts to bring,
Oh yeah. Okay.
right? But his gift was incredible. It was his talent to play the drums. And he said, I played my best for him. When I hear that, you guys might think I'm crazy, but when I hear that line in that song, it makes me want to cry.
Hmm.
I played my best
Right.
for him.
Yeah, you know what? Sometimes people are afraid to give their best because once you put it out there, and if people's, I mean, like, what is this? You have no more to give, and that goes back to the fear, and then the jealousy of people trying to tear you down because you in the same boat, but they can't see the vision.
Oh my gosh, that's so good. And it's so true. And how can we stop that?
Yeah, that's the question.
The other side of that is they don't want to give their best because once they give their best and people know that they have more to give than that little bit that they've been given, they're going to expect it. They're going to expect you to show up.
You
Some
get off
people
my,
only
you
wanna-
get off my toes right now.
they only want to show up.
You get off my toes. No, but it's true. Even with starting this, for example, right? The We Are Your Aunties. There is that expectation that if we say we're going to be here every Monday at 7, then guess what? Somebody's going to be here every Monday at 7. And if one or two or three of you can't make it, then guess who's showing up? Because I said I would. And so that's a whole other conversation because that goes to consistency, commitment, dedication. It goes to discipline. It goes to a lot of different topics. But within this topic, though, the crabs in the bucket is oh my God, I had to work out, I had to work my way out of that. I had to ask God to help me get out of that. Because there is something called, I'm going to call it a spirit. There's a spirit called image of jealousy. Ooh, good one. I should have brought that up. I'm glad I did. Image of jealousy. And what image of jealousy is, and Black women, Black young people, Black people in general. Now, come on. We all know there's something very special about us.
Oh, of course.
But when a Black woman, especially when she knows who she is and she's standing in her power, when she walks into a room, there's automatically jealousy. She doesn't have to open her mouth. You don't know who she is. You have not a clue about her background. But the minute she steps into a room, it stirs up that spirit of jealousy. We call that image of jealousy. Mm-hmm. And part of that is it calls forth others to walk in their greatness, but they're afraid.
Yes.
And so we attack what we're afraid of.
Wow.
And that's why a lot of us are afraid to do what it is that we're called to do. And we're looking at others and being jealous and envious of what they're doing and comparing ourselves to their program and what they're up to because we don't know what it is we're supposed to be doing because we're too afraid to try.
That's so good.
I didn't know what this was going to turn out to be, and I still don't know where it's going. Mm-hmm. We are your aunties. We're just here. We're just here doing what we do, being who we be until we get another directive. But from what the reports that I'm getting is that it's helping some people already.
Yay.
Amen. Yes.
That's what we came for.
Yep.
Impact. So what kills, I said, what can we do about it? What kills jealousy? What kills jealousy is each and every one walking in their own greatness.
Mhm.
And if you're not walking in it yet, pretend to
Yes.
until you get there. Fake it till you make it. And walk in what iota of your greatness that you understand already. That little modicum, that little piece. And surround yourself with others who see your greatness.
Mhm.
Man, it took a long time for me to see what people saw.
Mm.
I understand.
What
But
good
you know
people
what?
saw.
The devil should have never let me see it. I mean, you see glimpses. I totally see your greatness. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. I totally see it. But you all don't totally see it. I don't totally see it. But that's why you surround yourself with people who can see it, because when you're the picture, you're in the frame, so you can't see yourself. You need other people to come to the gallery of your life and tell you what they see. Right? So
Yeah.
we're gonna wrap it up because we're at 1 hour. But before we do that, I want to make sure that everyone, thank you, Jackie. We're so excited that you like it. We want to give each of us an opportunity to, in this episode, well, Wanda, I want you to start. And I want you to tell me what makes you great.
Oh, that one's easy. It's my creativity. That's my God power, my superpower, my love, my joy. It's like when I'm in that creative zone, don't be around me.
I want to soak it up.
You can soak it up. That's my heaven. That's like it took me a while to figure that out. I'm like, I used to complain about having so many creative ideas, and I'm like, oh no, that's my superpower. So that's what makes me great.
I love that. And you know what else too that I discovered in this conversation? It just registered for me how young you were when your parents passed. And that's what bred in you the ability to network the way that you do.
Mm-hmm.
Babies, nobody networks like Auntie Wanda.
I think it's the family size too. I'll say that.
Girl, all I have to do is say, Wanda, I need a person who, she goes, I know who to connect you with right over here. I mean, just like she connects people like crazy. So I get it. I'm so honored to know you.
Oh, it's mutual.
So
It's so mutual.
Auntie Genoa, we're gonna save Auntie Rosemary for last. Go ahead, Auntie Genoa. What makes you great?
My empathy and my compassion. My compassion for others.
Empathy and compassion for others.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we know where compassion comes from.
Mm-hmm.
It comes from having gone through so many tests that you can look around. Anyone can stand in front of you and you can say, I understand what you're going through. I get it. And you'll make it. You will. I promise you. That's a powerful superpower. Compassion is powerful. It can turn someone's whole life around in one conversation. Just that somebody is willing to listen and someone understands.
Mm-hmm.
Auntie Rosemary, what's your greatest greatness?
First, I want to say, anytime I walk past a queen, a prince, a king, I make sure that I lift their shoulders and tell them how beautiful they are. You know, that's the first thing. If I'm walking past, I acknowledge you. I acknowledge your beauty. I acknowledge that your presence. I do that. But my passion is,
Greatness.
Greatness is my passion. Creativity and giving of myself, because nothing like giving of yourself. And someone once told me years ago, it says nothing like giving. And I remember saying, it's better to receive. But I understand right now that it is so much powerful, so much better to give, especially of yourself. So
Mm.
that's my passion. I believe in passing the passion on, because if you do your passion, your God's given gift, your God giving gifts, you'll never work a day in your life, and you'll help so many people through generations.
Mm.
Mm. Wow, what really stood out for me and what you said was the giving of yourself. Because at the end of the day, that equates to time. And time is our most valuable commodity
Mhm.
because you can get more money, but that second right there is gone. That second is gone. That second is gone. We're never getting that back again. So if someone's willing to give of themselves, that means that they're willing to spend time, valuable time, right? And so there's nothing like that. And what that boils down to is my greatness. My greatness is love.
Hey.
Yep.
Yes.
I received it in spades. I mean, like my mother was the unconditional queen of unconditional love.
Wow.
I mean, it didn't matter where you were from, what you looked like, what your nationality was, what your economic standing. Like I still have work to do to get to where she was when she left here. I mean, like that woman would have people lined up around her house, like waiting to get in to have an audience with her
Mm.
to
Wow.
receive that impartation of what
Mm.
boiled down to unconditional love. Because everybody doesn't get it, everybody doesn't give it. It's rare.
It is.
So I get it now, though. But with that, with all of the greatness that we are, we also need to do what we did at the beginning. The first show is build boundaries too,
Mhm.
right? Healthy boundaries, not like get away, but also not like come on in. I got no walls. We learn that as we go, and that's what I want young people to come away from us with too, is healthy boundaries. Because with this culture of acceptance and tolerance and everything goes and blurring the lines and there's no real right, no real wrong. There's your truth and my truth. Really? Really? Let's have that conversation.
Sure.
So I want to thank each and every one of you for being here and imparting your creativity and your compassion and your time of giving yourself. And I want to thank myself for giving love. I want to also thank our producer, Jermel Wickware, who is just
Yes.
absolutely incredible. You guys have no idea. One day I'm going to have him get on here and tell you who he is. And I want to thank each and every one of our viewers. Next week, tell a friend. Oh, actually, you know what? Somebody
Have a watch
asked me
party.
if we were, yeah, have a watch party. Let me see. Are we really here next week, though?
Mm-mm.
What's today?
Today's the 5th. So
Yes, we have one more day. We have one more Monday to answer your question, Auntie Rose.
Okay.
And then on the 19th, I'll be free. So thank you very much for tuning in to We Are Your Aunties. And remember, ladies, you can
tell
tell anything.
that there's a way
Way
to
to
say
say everything.
everything.
Bye. You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. We love you out there.
Thank you.